So Rakeem Noble, thanks for your time today. I've known you a long time, and it's good to sort of finally get you on for a conversation. How's everything going with you? I know you've been retired for a few years.
Yeah, things are fine. I've been pretty busy on the boxing media scene for the last couple of months. Been at various shows, press conferences, just staying in the mix. So I've been out the ring, but I've not been far from the sport at all.
Yeah, I know. I've sort of followed what you've been doing. You've built Box Story up very quickly, and something I know about you, you're very knowledgeable on women's boxing. Who are some of your favorite fighters?
Uh, I don't know, but there's a line between favorites and fighters that I keep an eye on. But let's just say, for example, Serrano, Amanda Taylor, Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor. That's a good fight that should be built up. That should be happening in the first or second quarter of next year. Clarissa Shields, Savannah Marshall, that's another long-awaited one. Of course, you've got the undisputed championship between Callie Reese and Chantal Cameron at 140. That should be on one of the matchroom cards in the next couple of months. And then also you've got Jessica McCaskill, who's hovering around at 147, who also is an undisputed champion. So we've got six good fights, six good matchups that could be made in the next few months on the Matchroom and Boxer, or just on the boxing in general. So yeah, that's going pretty good.
Yeah, Matchroom seem to be dominating at the moment. They've announced a lot of shows recently. Two shows that stand out for me, which I want to attend. You've got Danny Jacobs versus John Ryder, and you got Lawrence Okoli versus Sislak, who I haven't really seen a lot of him yet, but I will. What do you think of some of the fights that have been announced by Matchroom recently?
They're attention grabbers. They're top level fights, what people want to see. Um, John Ryder versus Johnny Jacobs. Well, of course, John Ryder's been promised the world title shot for a while now. He got the short end of the straw against Callum Smith in a fight that Callum Smith wasn't meant to lose, and they didn't let him lose. So I feel this is more, instead of giving him a world title, because they can't really give him one right now, they're giving him a homecoming fight against a formidable world champion, which yeah, is more than incredible. So I guess this is his version of a world title. If we can't get you the shot, we'll get you a big opportunity. So here's his opportunity. He wins this, he's in the top fleet of the fighters, no doubt. Sislak versus Coley. It's a fight to keep Okoli busy. The number one in Poland at cruiserweight, whatever that means, whatever you hold that worth. Okoli gets through this. He looks on to bigger and better things. He's already talking about unifying. He's already talking about moving up the heavyweight. So this is a fight to keep him busy, to keep him ticking over, keep him active, keep him on the scene before that bigger fight comes along.
Okay, it's good stuff. I've been following, obviously, same with Matchroom. I've been following the whole situation with Dylan White and Tyson Fury to a certain degree. I mean, I'm starting to get bored now because you see it happening in boxing so many times. I'm leaning towards, I think the fight probably doesn't happen. I could be wrong. What do you think of the ongoing problems between White and Fury?
It will happen. It's just going to get dragged out. It's just going to get dragged out until both parties are relatively happy to not throw away what's on the table. No doubt within the UK it'll be a big fight. Dylan White's a pay-per-view name. Tyson Fury is the lineal number one ranked champion. So there's a lot of money in it for both parties. I think once the idea of the fight maybe getting scrapped, and they'll look at the next opponents and realize I'm not going to make as much money with my next opponent as this opponent. I might as well come towards some agreement. Yeah, I think it's just going to get dragged out, but I think they'll get there eventually. Other than Dylan White, he can verse Otto Warlin, he can verse Hellenius, um, Andy Ruiz Jr. maybe, but none of these fights will generate the income of what Dylan White will. So I think they'll get it together eventually with a lot of delay.
We'll see. Obviously, I don't think the two men are scared of each other. I just think in boxing, a lot of the time it comes down to greed. Both sides want to make as much money as they can.
I don't think no, it's not a case of them being scared of each other. It's just a case of maybe one person being a bit more greedy than the other, and both wanting to outgreed each other. I don't think they're scared. They just want as much money as they possibly can, which might not be fair or justifiable, but they're going to demand it anyway. I think that's what it's the case of, to be honest.
I 100% agree. I don't think it's fair. I just see. I understand. It's a hard sport. You want to make as much money as you can. If the fight does happen, I actually think Dylan White's got a good chance of winning. I'm not saying he's going to win. I give Fury 70% chance of winning. But how do you see the fight going? Do you think Dylan White can cause? Do you think Dylan White can win?
Yeah, at the level we all know the power lies in either fighter to cause the upset, especially the underdog. Dylan White's got the power to cause an upset. Depending on how the fight plans out, will he be able to? I'm not as sure, but you can't rule it out. It's one of those fights where it can't be ruled out. Tyson Fury goes in there as the favorite, no doubt. But in these kind of matchups, yeah, anything can happen. And Dylan White's not out of his depth. He's not out of his depth from one big punch changing the fight. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely anything can happen in a fight. If you look at the impact Ebony Bridges has had on British boxing, to me, she's come over here from Australia. She's made a name for herself very quickly, and she's got herself certain opportunities. For me, I've got a lot of respect for her. I think she understands the business of boxing. How would you analyze her rise in British boxing?
Yeah, she's done the right things. She's done the right things. She's done the right thing. It's not just the case. People also seem to think as well that it's just a case of she got onto the scales and she came in her lingerie. It's not just that she came in her lingerie. She's been back and forth to the UK multiple times throughout the last 2 years. She was doing meet and greets. She was meeting fans. She's done all of the media. She does all of the online talks. She goes to different shows and events that she's not even boxing at. They had her on the zone for analysis or commentary or for something the other week on one of the cards. I was at a Wasserman show a couple months ago, Boxing Social Wasserman show. She was there. Like, she's doing all of the right things in terms of being in the right place at the right time, talking to the right people, doing interviews, plus of course the lingerie and the raunchy stuff. So yeah, she's doing a full circle. Like I said, it's not just a case of showing up at the weigh-in. She's training with various different camps. I think she's training with the Tibbs, with Mark Tibbs. She's with Enzo McNally training there too. So you can't just say she's just walking around in lingerie. She's doing more than that. And I think it's great to see. Another thing, she went to Mexico to spar Mariam Juarez, baby Juarez, Mexican, well-known Mexican fighter. So yeah, she's making the most of the spotlight. She's making the most of the 50 minutes that she has. And she's really creating something which she can solidify going forwards, no doubt.
Oh, you're right. I remember when she sparred that fighter. I saw the pictures on social media. And, I wish her well. She also gets the business of boxing. What fights have you enjoyed recently?
Well, there's not been no fights recently. That's the problem. We're in January. There's not been no
Oh,
fights.
what
Last
fights
weekend
have
was a
you?
struggle.
Oh,
Talking of
nice.
last year,
Yeah, that's what I
last
mean.
year,
Last year.
last year, a fight I think I enjoyed probably was Cambosos Lopez, because no one expected that outcome. If you said you expected Cambosos to win, I'm gonna say you're a liar. No one expected Cambosos to win. We thought it was gonna be a walkover for Teofimo, and it turned out to be the upset that we just never expected was gonna happen. Even another big fight, Fury Wilder. Going into, of course, Fury was the favorite, but if Wilder was to knock Fury out or somehow get a win, we weren't going to be crazily surprised. Like, he even put him down, and the fact that he put him down was intense, but we wasn't shocked. We all knew it was in him. But Teofimo Lopez getting beat by George Kambosos after we saw him get a split decision with Lee Selby, an older Lee Selby, we just never saw that. So I think that's got to be a fight, one of the fights of the year that I really look forward, that I really enjoyed seeing at the time. We had various other fights, even some of the smaller level fights. Even seeing Amanda Serrano in her fights underneath Jake Paul's cards, even that was good to see. Who else did we see? Savannah Marshall just knocking people out on Boxer. That was great to see too. Usyk upsetting the odds, completely upsetting the odds against Anthony Joshua. Another cool fight to see. So yeah, there's been quite a few fights, I'd say, of last year.
Well, you mentioned Joshua Usyk. For me, yeah, I never thought Kambosos was going to win that fight. And with Usyk Joshua, I thought Joshua was going to win, but I gave Usyk a great chance of winning. And people say it's an upset, but sometimes people don't look at it from both fighters' points of view. I think Usyk's obviously an extremely well developed fighter. Do you think if Joshua's rematching him in say April time, which I believe that's what they want, can you see Joshua beating him so quickly?
No, since the fight's going to be in April, we're 4 months away. Joshua hasn't actually announced a coach yet, so he's still looking around for a coach. I don't know if 4 months is going to be a long enough time for him to adapt and to change and to do all of the things that he's going to need to do to then compete at the highest level of boxing. I think it's going to probably go to the same way it went the first time. Whatever Joshua learns within the next 4 months, it's going to be very hard to implement that against arguably the best fighter on the planet. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what Joshua brings to the table that fight.
Yeah, I agree. I just think, it's not long enough. And, it's like he's going from gym to gym to gym. It's like, make up your mind because you're going to be taking all these different kinds of advice, different approaches, and it's confusing, but we'll see what happens. What do you think are some of the problems in boxing? Like something that Steve Goodwin talks about is obviously where you have a lot of sort of shady characters, a lot of people that are in it just for money. And obviously they're telling fighters all kinds of things. But from your experience,
Boxing is full of shady characters. I had this conversation with someone the other day. Boxing is probably 80% shady characters, so it's impossible to go through boxing without coming across shady characters. Of course, it helps when you've got guys like Steve and others who are transparent and open, but I've kind of learned with boxing, you're going to deal with shady characters. That's just the nature of the sport. That's just the nature of what it is. Everyone's trying to get a fast buck over one another. Nothing stable, nothing secure. It's the nature of the game. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the game.
I understand. I mean, what advice or tips can you give to upcoming fighters? Like, what kind of things should they look out for?
Of course, you will say stick with the right people, but who are the right people? Ask questions every step of the way. If you don't get answers that make sense, then maybe it's time to cut out. Just ask questions. That's all you can really do. When you're stepping into this game where there's lots of smoke and mirrors, you just got to ask questions, touch the surfaces to see if it's real or not, and just keep on doing so every day to make sure that you're in the right place. Because yeah, it's a shaded sport, and that's just like I said, it's the nature of the game. I don't know what can be done to fully change it, but for the time being, just watch out.
Yeah, you're right. Hopefully things change in time. On a more positive note, what do you think are some of the biggest fights that can happen this year? What fights would you like to see?
The fights that we would like to see will be not Canelo. Oh, actually, yeah, let's say Canelo Makubu, the fight that we never knew we wanted, which we now potentially want. Canelo Makubu, Canelo Bataviev, Crawford Spence, that's been long awaited.
Yep.
Fury AJ, Fury Wilder, Dylan White Wilder, Dylan White AJ. I feel it's quite ridiculous. There's so many fights that we could have. Prince Patel, Sonny Edwards, Charlie Edwards, Prince Patel. There's so many versions of fights that we should really have, but we're not getting, or it's taking ages for it to actually carry out. I'm glad we're finally getting Brooke Khan. That's one of those fights that was on the list of fights that we should have had, but we're already getting now. But better late than never. So yeah, there's a few fights. There's a few fights that actually be interested in seeing. So we'll see how things map out for 2022.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, there's a lot of possibilities, but let's just see if they actually get made. How do you think boxing these days compares to the 70s and 80s, where you had a lot of classic fights happening? And obviously fighters then, they had a different mentality. They were willing to fight each other. But I mean, do you think sort of greed is taking over these days? Do you think it's just a different era now? Things are more complicated?
It's a different era. It's a different era, and of course the greed was always there. The greed was in boxing in the 70s and 80s. Look at from when Mike Tyson was around with Don King. Don King was taking money from him. You had fighters like who were around when Ali was there, people were taking money from him too. So there's always been greed in boxing. It's just the scales of it have just got a lot bigger. The paychecks of what they were getting in the 70s compared to now is not even close. They're getting paid way much more now. So they're getting
Yep.
ripped off way much more now. So everything's just growing in proportion. Yeah, fighters had more of a mentality back. I think fighters back then had the mentality of, yeah, I want to get on and fight. I'm going to get on and do this. But at the same time, they were probably less business savvy and less educated in understanding purses, money that they would get, managers' fees, managers' cuts. I think they were definitely they were definitely less aware of what can go on between the money from the promoter making it to the fighter. Whereas today we are more aware. I'm not saying it don't happen because it happens all the time. Fighters today are just more aware of it. So some fighters even manage themselves. Some fighters even cut out the manager and just do that part themselves, or they get family members to do it. So I say that's changed.
Yeah, you're right. I think Dylan White manages himself now.
Yeah, Dylan White has a team around him. He has him and his team. They manage it themselves. Even David Haye was an example of someone who did it throughout most of his career. Even some fighters now, smaller fighters, they've got a management team which is pretty much a family member or their dads or a close friend of theirs. It's becoming a lot more personal, a lot more intimate, so that they're having an understanding of where their money's going to. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're here for.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's a dangerous sport, and you need to make sure you look after your money. But
But not even the sport. It's just
so,
not even a sport. It's just a job. I guess any job, whether it be from working in an office to driving buses to driving trains to being a ticket inspector, you want to get money. You want to get paid at the end of the day for doing your job. Unless, what's the point, regardless of what it is?
you're right. Because otherwise, what's it all been for? All
Yeah,
that
what's it all
effort.
been for? Hmm.
Away from boxing, obviously, I think you've got a background where you've been to university. I think you've got a degree in law, and can you tell us more about that? Because obviously, a lot of fighters or some fighters they neglect that side of their lives.
I wouldn't even say fighters neglect that side of their life. I would say as well, some fighters just don't get opportunity to. Boxing's a pretty predominantly working class sport. For many of the fighters, going to university is just never an option, or it's just never a consideration, or never something that came along. So someone like myself, who's come from a range of backgrounds and environments before coming to boxing, yeah, it helps because boxing is just another environment or culture that I've been in, which you navigate your way around. Whereas some people, all they ever know is boxing. This is the only environment they've been in. I've been to various environments that can say, this is just one of many, and I understand how to adapt. So I guess it's been good in that aspect. And that's just another area to kind of cover.
Okay.
But
And do you think it's had an impact on your boxing career, giving you a better understanding?
maybe yeah, I guess just life experience, just having a wider life experience of just being in more environments and situations. I can handle things or understand things or why things happen probably a little bit better. But I guess we can all get that from different walks of life, depending on the individual and how much you've been exposed to. So boxing, I think straight away from what I can, from my experiences stepping in, I can see boxing is quite unorganized. There's corruption. It's not as polished,
Regulated?
maybe. Huh?
Regulated?
Yeah, regulated. It's not as polished when you get on the inside of it. Of course, when you see it on Sky Sports or BBC, it looks fine tuned and everything. But once you get inside, you can see the cracks all over the place. But as much as we can sit here and discredit the sport, we're all here because we enjoy it. We have a passion for it. It takes a different kind of person to enjoy what boxing is, and yeah, we take it for what it is. We take it for what it is.
Yeah, obviously it's an addictive sport, and yeah, it's hard to get out of your system. And to finish off, can you tell us about some of your interests outside of boxing? Obviously, I know you and me went to an event once. I know you've got a big, you're a big sort of wrestling fan. You like sort of comic books, that sort of thing, and you've been to Japan before. Can you tell us about that side of your life?
Yeah, there's various, like I said before boxing. I had interest in stuff that I was into before boxing. So I like traveling, lived in Japan for a year, like love comics, love Marvel, love anime, love all that kind of stuff. Into fashion, into photography, studied law before I came into boxing. I currently work in a banking environment of my day job. I design clothes, I design some labels and stuff along those lines. So yeah, there's like various things that I'm into and I'm interested into around the boxing square. As I said, many environments I was into before I came into boxing, and even since boxing, there's other interests that I picked up and liked. And that's always just been useful and that's always been good because boxing's not everything. I can like go elsewhere and do something else and find success there or have a good time there. Admittedly, it's been tough for the last 2 weeks with no boxing going on at all, but I'm probably handling it probably a bit better than others in that there is just other tasks and stuff that I can get on with to keep myself occupied. So yeah, that's what I do. Obviously not traveling right now because no one's traveling anywhere because it's lockdown. But life goes on and on to next week.
Yeah, just keep yourself busy in the meantime, and let's just wait for the fights to start happening again. Yes, been a pleasure talking to you, Rakeem, and I'm sure I'll see you at more shows in future.
Yeah, man, I'll see you. Well, see you in 2022 at some point, face to face.
Anytime. Thanks for your time, Rakeem.
See you, mate.
Cheers.